We love the myth of the lightning strike, the idea that a writer sits down at a desk, a sudden flash of inspiration hits, and perfect, fully formed words flow directly onto the page. Consider the work of modern British poet Vicki Feaver. She is a master at taking quiet, everyday domestic tasks and rendering them highly visceral. Look at the opening imagery of her poem, Ironing. She describes the household iron flying over sheets and towels, comparing it to a sledge being chased by a pack of wolves over snow. When you read those lines, they feel like a raw, spontaneous burst of adrenaline. In reality, imagery this sharp is the product of a highly calculating, ruthless process of elimination. Look at the messy reality behind the finished poem. These are Feaver's raw, unorganized brainstorming notes. The page is full of fragmented phrases and completely unpolished blocks of text. Embedded in these rough notes are highly personal stories. She documents a memory of singing a folk song with her father and a passing comment from a flirtatious neighbor. None of these details exist in the final published poem. Why would a writer take the time to record such vivid, distinct personal memories, only to erase every single one of them before the work reaches the public? The first phase of the creative process is often a pure brain dump. The goal here is to gather raw sensory data and physical reactions without judging them or trying to make them sound poetic. You can see Feaver using her notebook as an inventory of physical sensations. She catalogs the dampness of the cloth, the smell of synthetic fabric, and the sheer weight of her own body pressing into the board. She explicitly documents the physical toll of striving to be what she calls the good mother, noting the strain radiating through her hand and shoulder as she forces the iron down. If you compare the raw notebook to the final text, exactly one narrative line survives the transition completely untouched. It reads, "Then for years I ironed nothing." That single line survives because it serves as the emotional linchpin of the whole piece. It represents a sudden, absolute rebellion against all of those heavy domestic expectations. Let's look at the elements she actively destroyed. Writers often talk about murdering your darlings, the practice of cutting fascinating details to strengthen the overall focus of the work. She records a memory of singing an old folk song with her father while working. Leaving that specific memory on the page would steer the reader toward a warm, nostalgic family history, so she deletes it. She also drafts a thought about a TV commercial for spray-on starch. That reference explicitly links her action to the external societal pressure of the ideal 1950s housewife. She strips that out, too. Finally, she crosses out the anecdote about a neighbor whose husband fancied her. Including that kind of neighborhood gossip immediately turns the poem into a piece of interpersonal drama. By deliberately excising every other human being from the text, Feaver traps the reader. We are forced to stay locked within her highly isolated internal emotional state. Without a cast of supporting characters to distract us, the household iron stops acting as a simple domestic prop. It absorbs all the focus, becoming a direct reflection of her own soul. Into the void left by those deleted characters, she injects completely different imagery, massive industrial concepts. She writes about the welders at Jarrow and an iron the size of a tugboat. These hyperbolic images scale up a traditionally invisible chore. They elevate the act of pressing laundry into a display of monumental, destructive power. She then contrasts all that industrial aggression with the final stanza. The violence completely fades, and she is simply ironing a single silk blouse for her own pleasure. By clearing away the clutter of other people's stories, she creates physical and emotional room. Room to, as the poem concludes, push her own lungs and heart into the fabric of her life. A writer's notebook isn't a vault meant to keep every memory safe. It functions as a sorting mechanism to help you decide exactly what needs to be thrown away. The process is one of heavy distillation. You take a crowded, chaotic room of ideas and systematically strip them back until only the absolute core emotion remains. True art requires distillation. The power of a finished poem relies on the specific words a writer decides to keep, but the focus of that poem relies entirely on the writer's willingness to cross everything else out.